And we are live. Welcome back with Murphy Mac to another episode of the Fitness Beginner Podcast. We help you get started on your fitness journey. How's it going, everybody? Hope you're all having a great week so far. We have another interview on the podcast for the topic today, and we have Miss Kate Edwards. We're going to bring her up onto the screen now. So first off, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I'm glad that you're coming on to share some insight on what it is you do in fitness and health. So basically the gist of the podcast is we like to help people get started or help people that is kind of newer to fitness. We typically keep things at a basic level, and then when we have people on like you, we like to dive deeper into certain topics. So we're interested in learning about what you have to share today. So thank you for joining the podcast. And if you would, just go ahead and give the listeners a quick little glimpse about what you do and how you got started.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks again for having me. I really am excited to be here. New exercisers, new runners, they're my favorite because I think we can really make a huge impression and keep them injury free and get them excited about taking care of themselves. So, thank you. I am a doctor of physical therapy and I own Precision Running Medicine Clinic in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm also the founder of the RunSource app. I do a lot of research about running and exercise and just like helping people to do what they love. And I see a lot of patients. I have a podcast of my own and I've written a couple of books. So my world is mostly running, but I do think that every sport and everybody who exercises eventually does some sort of running. And in running, we do a lot of strength training as well, or at least I hope most people do. So I know quite a bit about that as well and really incorporate that with my athletes.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one because I consider myself a new runner. I just started running. It's probably been about 2 years now, but I'm still fairly new for a runner. Now I will say I didn't do it the correct way, so you'll probably be mad at me, but we can learn the correct ways today. We're gonna learn how to do it correctly today. I always tell people don't do what I do. It's not the right way. So I did first like running event I did Ironman. So I ran a marathon off the get go.
That's a big deal. That's a big
Yeah.
deal.
And then this year I ran a 100-mile ultra marathon. So yeah,
Awesome.
I went from 0 to 100%, which I know is not the correct way to do it. So don't do that. Anybody else out there that's listening, don't do that.
It might not be the wrong way though. If it made you happy, you didn't get injured, and it kind of like you just jumped right in. That's all. I thought my first race was a half marathon, and I thought that was a really big way to jump in. But I'm telling you, an Ironman,
Yeah,
that's huge.
I never done any. Well, let me say that I did a smaller triathlon before I did the Ironman. So I worked my way up to the Ironman, but
That's
yeah,
good.
less than a year of running when I did it. So
Wow.
yeah, I didn't have much experience, and luckily I stayed. I did have a few little injuries here and there, but nothing that took me out of the race, obviously. So that was good. Anytime I experienced any like pains or anything, I've backed off, took some days off. So I try to be smart about it. But I know sometimes you can really injure yourself going too fast, especially when it comes to running. Running is one that's, if you don't do it right, you're definitely going to injure yourself. So
That's right.
hopefully we can learn the right ways to do it today. That's the goal.
Okay.
So while running, what got you into running?
Yeah, so actually, it's really interesting. I grew up in a very small town. So, actually, two, because my parents were divorced, but we didn't really have a lot of sports to choose from. And running wasn't even a sport that we had to choose from. But what I did is I really needed to move my body. And I used to run from my house to the back or to the end of my dirt road and back. And that's honestly how I started running. I had no idea what I was doing. Nobody told me anything, which is oftentimes how most runners begin. And I just started to fall in love with it. And then throughout college or throughout high school, I didn't run on a team because we didn't have it. But then in college, I got really into it. And my first real race was a half marathon. And it was just by learning it kind of on the fly and from friends. And it was one of those sports that you could just go out, you could put your shoes on, go out the door. And it was a really great way for me to clear my mind. So I fell in love pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's one of those. It takes, you got to get over that hump before you really learn to enjoy it. Because
Yeah.
I'll be honest, like when I trained for the Ironman, I really didn't care for running. Like I quit running after the Ironman because I did a bodybuilding show after that, so I kind of quit running, and I didn't care for it. But then now I did the ultra marathon in April, and now that I trained for that, like I love running now. Like definitely gonna keep doing it. I don't know what was different from the Ironman compared to training for the ultra, but something was different and it clicked when I did the ultra. So I like it now. But to me, I feel like you gotta get up there in mileage before you can really like appreciate it. Because when people first start, when they're not even doing no 3 miles, they're like, I hate this. Like this sucks. It's not fun. I'm like, wait till you get a good 10 miler in. Wait till you go for 10 miles, and you're like, okay, I see what they're talking about now. You gotta give yourself some time to get up there in my opinion. I know it's a little different for everybody, but yeah, you
I
really
think
can't enjoy it until you really get up there and push yourself.
Well, I think it depends too what your background is, right? So if you're already in fitness, it's probably different than somebody who is just starting out and they're using running as their first introduction into fitness. Because I find that, yes, every time someone starts, it kind of stinks, right? I remember
Mhm.
going for the first half mile and being like, oh, I'm never going to make it any further. And then every time I would go out, I would set just a little bit further. And then I would feel that sense of accomplishment. So I do think that if you can create a way where you have a sense of accomplishment, it makes a difference. And then also, if you've never been involved in fitness before, you can quickly see the changes in your body and how you feel in your body, how your brain feels after exercise, if you are just starting out and never having done anything else. So I do think that, yes, running 10 miles is unbelievable. But then, even for somebody who's running a mile, it might make a really big difference if they've never done anything before.
Yeah, absolutely. I always get the question like, why would you do something like that? Why would you run so far? I'm like, I can't give you that answer. You just got to do it for yourself. Like you got to go try it, and then you'll know. You'll know the answer then when you do it. It's one of those things like you just got to get in there and do it yourself.
Yeah.
It's so funny hearing people like that get into running and they go all in because they're always like, man, I never liked running. I hated running. I never saw myself being a runner, and now I'm hooked. So it's one of those things you gotta really give it a shot, give it a chance, to really see if you're gonna like it and enjoy it. But you gotta do it smart because you will injure yourself.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Slow and steady.
So you say you work with a lot of runners. So what is your ideal like clientele that you work with? Are you doing marathoners, ultra runners, new beginners? Who do you work with?
Yeah, so because the clinics that I own are running medicine clinic, we work with all sorts of runners. So I actually work with elite athletes on a regular basis. So my company is the providers for the Atlanta Track Club Elite. So we work on those athletes. So I have worked on people who've been to the Olympics or the Olympic trials, but then I also work on a lot of weekend warriors, people who just are running because they just want to exercise. And then, people are high performers like CEOs and, people who just use running because they need something to help them mentally get rid of the stress. And then we also treat high school and middle school runners who are just doing it for the first time or people who are just trying to get healthy. So we see everybody at my clinics. I personally tend to see the people that haven't got better with other people. So I see a lot of athletes who have tried physical therapy before and it's never worked, or they've tried to see multiple healthcare providers and it hasn't worked, sometimes upwards of like 7 or 8 other people before they get to me. So I kind of treat at this point the people who don't know what else to do and they just really want to exercise, they just really want to run and they want to be in their body and they don't know how to get there.
So you're working more like on the recovery side than necessarily like the training side, the coaching side.
Yeah, and so we do. Yeah, so I work with injury prevention and people
Mhm.
coming back from injury. However, a lot of what we do is education. So many people that come to us have, just put on their shoes and gone out the door and don't necessarily know how or what they're doing. So we talk about nutrition, or we send them to a dietitian if they need that. We talk about sleep and stress and how that impacts your exercise and your injury prevention. And then we talk a lot about strength training and how that helps you be a more resilient runner. So we educate on everything from like running shoes all the way to how to build out a consistent training plan. Now, that is not always my lane. So I do refer out a lot, right? So I refer out to
Mhm.
sports psychologists, to dietitians or coaches or whatever it is in my community I need to refer out to. But we do a lot of the education around all of it.
Awesome. So you talked a little bit about strength training. and obviously you work with runners. So what is your opinion on the new hybrid athletes that are out there nowadays? Because I feel like that's kind of the approach that I'm taking now. I kind of have a mix of both. So what is your opinion on that?
I think it's great. I mean, I just did a lecture for other healthcare providers who want to treat runners this weekend, or taught a course actually. And some of the research, I was updating all the research and the slides, and the newest research shows that 60% of runners actually also do strength training at this point, which is amazing. And
Mhm.
I think it's really important because if you only do one thing, then your body gets used to that one thing, and it's not easy to move and cut and do other move in other directions or other ways. And so if you can do more than one thing, I think you're more resilient and more resistant to injury. Now, if you're doing, multiple things at 150%, maybe that's not the case. But in general, I think that it's really beneficial to have more than one sport.
When it comes to beginners, what is the main thing? It could be more than one that you see right off the bat that's causing injuries.
Yeah, people get so excited once they start to see changes in their body, when they start to really fall in love with it, when they get that runner's high, and so they just want to do more and more and more, and they continue to do more without thinking about maybe that recovery piece or that rest days are important. So it's that pushing themselves past where their body is really ready to go too quickly, and their muscles, their tendons, their ligaments, their bones may not be ready to take on the amount of load and training that they are putting out there.
Yeah, it's so hard not to go too far too fast because like
Yeah.
I this is me in a nutshell. Like I want to do this so bad, and it's so hard for me to like say, okay, I'm gonna stop right here today. Like I'm not gonna keep going because once you get in a run and you get that runner's high, you're like, oh, I can do another mile. I'll knock it out, no problem. When really you shouldn't. Like it would be more beneficial if you didn't run it than if you did run it. So I know that's hard, but people got to really understand that. Like do your training plan, follow it to a T. You've probably heard of this rule before, but to keep you from overtraining, I've heard this rule and I really like it. I think it makes sense. I want to get your opinion on it. Is never increase your training load by more than 10% of what you did the previous week. Have you heard that before?
Oh yeah, so that's actually kind of how we build out a lot of our training programs. Is it's actually 10 to 15%
Hmm.
is what the newest research had said up until, okay, so a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was a month ago, a little bit more research came out that said maybe you don't necessarily need to stick to that 10 or 15% because injury often occurs with like one episode of really intense training can create injury, or if you're not consistent enough. So if you're like exercising or running less than 2 days a week, or if you're running more than 7 days a week. However, I still think that that 10 to 15% rule is really, really useful because that's just one or two articles that aren't taking in all of the variables that come together when we think of training. So I just want to point that out because there are several people out there talking about this whole idea. Oh, now I can increase my mileage by 25% or 30% and I might be okay. I don't really think that is right. I do think that that 10 to 15% is a really safe place to be. And I think we're going to see in the upcoming months and years how we can morph that and change that a little bit differently. But I do think it matters. Your recovery matters, your nutrition matters, your sleep, your and your stress matter more than we really are giving it credit for.
Yeah, I think like experienced people or high level athletes like you work with, I think they could get away with doing more. But just to be on the safe side for like most people, probably 95% of people, just to be on the safe side, that 10 to 15%, it's probably a good number to stick to. You might as well take it slower than overdoing it. Especially if you're not like if you don't have like an event coming up. Like if you're running track, obviously you're on a timeline, you have a certain track date, so it's like yeah, you got to increase your mileage by whatever each week. But yeah, if you're just general running, general fitness, general health, there's really no need to like really push the limits unless you really are just trying to for some reason.
Yeah, I know. I really like that 10 to 15% rule. I think it's safe. I think it's, and depending on what your injury history is or what your goals are, I still think that you can really gain a lot by following that 10 to 15% rule.
Hmm. So you mentioned a little bit about shoes earlier.
Yeah.
What do you think about the max cushion shoes? So I know I see a lot like people use them for recovery, but a lot of people nowadays are just running with them, like that's their main running shoe. Do you think that's a good thing? Do you think that's a bad thing? What's your opinion on those?
Yeah, I could go really deep with the shoe conversation because I'm a
Mhm.
super nerd, but I'll try to keep it tight, right?
Mhm.
So there's several different kinds of shoes, and cushion is just one category. So there's cushion, there's stability, there's neutral, there's carbon or nylon plated, which are more like those super shoes.
Mhm.
Um, but there isn't a lot of good research on anything. The best research out there says that the running shoe that is the most comfortable is the one that you should wear. And then the other piece about that is what we know is that you should have more than one kind of running shoe. So even if you pick a cushion shoe and you really like a cushion shoe and it feels really, really good, if you have two different types of cushion shoes, because not all cushion shoes are the same, you can pick two different types. It's better to have those two types to rotate than it is to just have one type of cushion shoe. Now,
Mhm.
cushion shoes, um, they they vary so much because the amount of cushion, where the location of the cushion is, what it's made of. So, I mean, I think if that feels good, great. But it has a little bit of like it can protect smaller runners, so more petite runners from injury a little bit. That's what the research says. But other than that, it doesn't really necessarily protect you from anything. It just feels good.
Yeah, I got a pair of the Max Cushion ones
Yeah.
initially, and it felt like I was running on clouds. I was like,
Yeah.
"This is amazing." I don't know why I didn't get these a long time ago. I didn't get them till after, like, my first triathlon. I was like, "Man, I've been missing out." But no, I do what you do, though. I do what you said. I have a couple different pairs, so I try not to wear I won't wear the same pair back to back. I try to swap
Yeah.
them up, just for that reason.
That's
And
that's
just
perfect.
yeah, just to clear up why you would do that. So for people listening, I know why, but like why would you say use different pairs of shoes instead of just using the same pair every time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a couple of reasons. One is that the shoe actually has to recover from the run that you went on. So the cushion itself, like the actual like inside of the shoe, it has to recover. So you'll see like if you look on the outside, like all these stress lines. So you want them to recover. But also different shoes require different movement patterns, different muscles, different things when you're using them. So if you have two different types, then you're not always doing the same thing, using the same muscles, the same pattern every single time. You're now switching it up a little bit. And then that helps you in terms of being a resilient runner.
Mhm. Yeah, I kind of nerd out on like biohacking stuff. So I've been walking barefoot a lot. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to strengthen my feet. So anytime like I'm around the house, I don't wear shoes anymore. I'm walking barefoot. So just for that reason, I'm trying to. I don't know. I go down the rabbit hole too much into all the biohacking stuff. I'm doing the ice baths and all that. So I'm all in.
Well, I actually treat patients barefoot too. I love being barefoot.
Mhm.
I think it's great. So, because I own my own practice, I do treat my patients barefoot. When I worked for somebody else, they didn't really like that.
Yeah, I can see it being weird in the workplace, but people need to like people don't understand that your feet are basically what you're doing when you wear shoes is you're weakening your feet because your feet aren't having to like the muscles in your feet aren't having to work. I'm not the expert on this, but this is what I've heard. So by rotating the shoes, you're working different muscles out in your feet, which keeps them more healthy. You have a lot of like nerve endings and things in your feet, so we gotta. Another thing is grounding. I like the
Yeah.
grounding thing too. So.
That's part of the reason I do it too. And I teach people to do strength training barefoot if they can, if it's a place
Mhm.
where it's, like at their home or something like that, or in a place where they're comfortable, but so that they can build up the strength in their feet. And it's less weird for me because I'm in a place where I'm always taking people's shoes off and teaching them to be barefoot. So it's not as weird to be barefoot, I guess, as it would be in an office.
Yeah, when I got rid of like I don't wear tennis shoes when I'm weight training anymore. I got some flat they're weightlifting shoes. They're strictly flat. And I even have some of those barefoot shoes you've probably seen, not the ones with the toes in them, but like
Yeah,
the regular barefoot shoes. I got some of those that I'll work out in too. Just to help with, feet stability and ankle mobility and things like that.
that's great.
So let's look. So what is you said you mentioned your app. What is it?
Yeah.
RunSource? Is that so
Yeah.
what exactly is that?
Yeah, so RunSource, I created it because I realized that one, a lot of people don't have the resources that my elite athletes have, or a lot of people have. So some people live in really rural areas, or they can't afford really expensive services, or they don't want to go see a healthcare provider for one reason or another. And so I created this app called RunSource that I brought together 50 different healthcare providers and experts in running medicine and the sport of running. So there's coaches, strength trainers, people who know all about shoes. There's PTs, MDs, yoga instructors, meditation instructors, everybody. And all of these people came together to be on this platform, and it's a big educational platform. Research shows that education is one way we can decrease running injuries. And so this platform is built to help with that. And it's built to help people who have an injury come back. So, for instance, if you have an Achilles issue or a hamstring issue and you're not really sure what to do, you can go onto this app and you can ask it questions. Actually, the version 2, I'm hoping it'll come out tonight or tomorrow. Maybe it'll be next week, because sometimes the development, you never know. And I've been waiting, but the version 2, you can ask it questions. You can say, I have pain or I have symptoms in this location. What do you think it is? And it'll go through a bunch of questions that I would normally ask in my clinic, and it'll hone in on what it possibly could be. And then it'll tell you what you can do. And then if it's something, say, like a bone stress injury, which most people call a stress fracture, like if it starts to seem like that's something it might be, it'll say, you really need to go see a doctor for this. So it cues you when you really need to go see a doctor or a PT, but then it gives you the information that you can do on your own if you're in a place where you can't find someone like me to see. So it's really exciting. And when this version 2 comes out, it's going to be amazing sometime very, very soon, within the next few days.
And that's utilizing AI to answer those questions.
Yeah, but it's not like, so this is the thing. It's not like ChatGPT or Perplexity where you ask questions like that. This is a closed system that I've created, and it only pulls answers from the content that I've created, or that is created by the experts. So your information that you're getting is only from like clinical patterns that I've written out based on my 15 plus years of experience, or research articles that I have curated over the last 15 years about running medicine, or some of the videos or podcasts that my experts have been on giving information. So it's different than an AI in the way that we think of it. It uses AI to search through the information and pull up what you need and direct you to the information that you need.
Yeah, it's basically like you in an app. That's what it is. I,
Yeah, it's, yeah,
I've
it's kind of
I've seen
scary.
I've seen a lot of these AI things coming up, and they're like you're talking about. They're not pulling from the internet, they're not pulling from Google or whatever. They're pulling from like your research, your studies, or like you said, the people you work with. It's pulling just from you, so it's more not structured, but it's more what's the word? Not specific, narrowed in like on what you do specifically and how you would answer. So it's
Yeah,
basically like an AI version of you.
it is, and it's good because you can build in protections. Like, and of course, we don't really understand AI to its nth degree. So, but I can say, like, if this person says this, send them to a doctor, and that's what we do. Or if this person says this, make sure they know that they really need to see somebody. Or mine even might get a little sassy if you ask the same question multiple times. We'll say, "Hey, you have asked this question several times. Do you think maybe you need to see somebody?" So it's really interesting, and it's really fun, and it's I really can't wait to get it out there to help as many people as possible, because only about 25% of runners ever even seek out healthcare providers because they're afraid that we're going to tell them to stop running, which is not usually what I do anyway, unless it's like a bone stress injury or a fracture. But yes, I'm excited for this resource to be out there.
So if somebody wants to get started running today,
Yeah.
no running experience at all, what would you tell them to do for getting started out?
Yeah, the first thing I'd tell them is to go to a local running shoe specialty shop. So instead of like a big store, because
Mm,
those people there are trained in the newest things that are coming out in running shoes, and they can help you find a shoe that is comfortable to you. And if you don't like that shoe, they usually take them back and you get your money back. So it's a really good, like, it's a really good relationship for the consumer. And then the other thing is they usually know all the resources within the running community in your area. So they might also have like a running group that you can get involved in. They might be able to tell you where to go. They may even be able to tell you the healthcare providers that you need to see if you need to see them, or local coaches. So I always say, find your local running shoe store because it's such a great resource for runners. That's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do is, once you have a pair of shoes and a pair of socks that aren't cotton, because you don't want to get a lot of blisters, is I would say find a good running program to start with. Or if you don't really want to go scouring the internet, start with a run walk program if you've never run at all. And you might consider something like 1 minute on, 1 minute off. Or if you don't want to time it, you could pick, like, on your street, where's the next mailbox? Run to the first mailbox, walk a little bit, run to the next mailbox. And then making sure that when you're done, you're eating something to support the exercise that you just did. So get in the habit of eating a little bit before you run and eating a little bit after you run, because that helps to support your recovery and your ability to pull on some of the resources you need in your metabolic system for running. So that's how I would start, or tell people to start.
Yeah, you mentioned the shoe store, so that's kind of what I did. And a lot of those local running stores actually do like they'll scan your feet,
Yeah.
and that'll help you. Like, they'll be able to tell you where your pressure points and stuff are on your feet, and then they can kind of suggest shoes based off of that. I don't know how accurate that really is, but that's what they did for me, and I love the shoes I got, so it worked out for me. So you definitely could try that. You may have more of an opinion on those little I don't even know what you call them,
The
the
scanners.
scales. Yeah.
I think that they're good for finding, like, the kind of shoe you need. Like if you need a
Mhm.
wide shoe or you need a narrow shoe, they can kind of push you in that direction. I don't think all the information on there is really useful, but again, like, I think it can direct you into finding a shoe that's comfortable, which ultimately is the most important thing when it comes to a running shoe, is that you're comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also mentioned there may be like a local run group or something you could join. I think that's a great piece of advice, because I would much rather prefer running with somebody than running alone. And don't get me wrong, I do like running along too, alone, because you do kind of get that runner's high, and you kind of, think about all your thoughts that you need to think about, and that's cool too. But especially if you have like a long run, running with somebody makes it so much easier. Like, that's such a hack. If you got a long run, run with somebody.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and it's actually like 50% of runners now run with somebody else. It didn't used to be that way. And it's actually some studies that came out this year were looking at, like, the habits of runners, and it's changed significantly over the last several years. It used to be that people ran more for fitness, and they ran more alone, and now they run with people for community connection, for mental health. And that's a really cool thing. I think that's such a great shift in terms of our sport.
So speaking of mental health, do you have any, is there any common like mental or emotional barriers that you see in runners? How can people start overcoming these?
Yeah, so I think that actually, when it comes to mental health, a sports psychologist that I worked with, or still work with, often says mental health is a continuum. It's not that you have good mental health or bad mental health, it's just a continuum. And we're somewhere along that continuum at any point. For runners, I think what happens a lot of times when you really get into it, and I think this can happen with any sport, this can happen with weightlifting or soccer or whatever it is it becomes a part of our identity, who we are, how we fit into society, who our friends are, what we eat, what we wear, all of those things. And that can become troublesome, because if you then get injured or can't do it anymore, you start to not know who you are anymore. And so I often tell my athletes that it's a really important thing, is when you start running, or even if you've been running for a very long time, to make sure that you have something else outside of your sport that you love, that brings you joy, that you can do, so that if something happens and you can't do this one thing, you have a few other things to fall back on. So I think that is something that we don't really always talk about when it comes to athletes and runners, because it is so good for us from a mental and emotional standpoint that we forget the flip side sometimes.
Yeah, I like that piece of advice because anytime like I train for a race and you have that build up, you're training for months, and then you have that race, and it's like the next day you're like, you just kind of feel off. You're like, well, what now? What do I do now? Like, you kind of feel different because you're like, now I don't have that thing to train for. Or like when I was training from ultra, I got I guess a little tendonitis on the backside of my knee, like where my hamstring connects.
Mhm.
And I had to take off like 3 weeks, and it was the worst 3 weeks ever. I was like, man, this sucks because
Yeah.
I couldn't run. I had to stop 100% because I couldn't. It wouldn't heal. Like I tried running like a week later, and then it came right back. So I was like, all right, not gonna run at all. And it wasn't fun. It was like, man, I don't know what to do. Luckily, I was still weight training. I just wasn't doing my legs, so that kind of kept me busy. But I can see what you're talking about. Like if you was just running, you didn't have anything else to lean on, it would be kind of hard, mentally because you're not doing that thing that you love to do.
Yeah. So I mean, it could be literally anything. You could cook, you could color, you could take pictures, you could, if you had weightlifting or yoga, you could go do that. But I always even when I do return to run programs or work with clients, I put a column in my return to run program next to strength, next to how much you can run. Like, what are you doing for your mental health? And you have to tell me and you have to check it off.
Awesome. So when it comes to running, you probably have a lot of athletes, especially with high level athletes. They probably experience burnout. So what are some early signs of burnout? Can you detect this beforehand, or is it normally you can detect it after?
Yeah. Are you talking about overtraining or are you
Yeah,
talking?
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess so.
Yeah. Okay. Cause there's two different, I mean, burnout is just you're done. Like mentally, you don't want to do it anymore. And I do think that
Mhm.
that happens with a lot of high level athletes when they no longer love what they're doing and they can't find joy in what they're doing. And that's really, really hard. And that takes a lot. And that's a lot of work with a sports psychologist. And then asking yourself, like, is this worth it? Is this really what I want to do? But then when we're talking about like overtraining, there are tons of signs and symptoms that occur before it happens that you can kind of be keyed into. Actually, getting a cold, getting sick a lot, that's a sign of overtraining. Feeling burnt out mentally is a sign of overtraining. Being Having GI disruption, so like either feeling like you like having lack of appetite or you're overeating, that's another sign. Things that you can track are like HRV, heart rate variability, or even heart rate drift, just looking at your heart rate in the morning. Those are things that you can track to see if you are overtraining as well. Usually if your heart rate variability starts to increase or your heart rate starts to increase every day, those are signs. Increased muscle soreness is a sign where you are, it's okay to be sore after a run or a workout, but if you are really, really sore for multiple days, like 4 or 5 days, that's definitely an issue. So there are tons of different things. I would also mention that sometimes overtraining is linked with low energy availability. So not getting enough food in your body to support the exercise that you're doing. And that is something that shows up a lot, especially in athletes that are doing a lot of miles.
So speaking of food, do you have is there like a standard for how much food you need to be replacing after a workout? Is there any kind of like law that you go by, or it's just kind of based on the independent athlete?
Unfortunately, it's very independent, and that's why
Mhm.
working with a sports dietitian, even if you only meet with them once, can be really, really helpful. But there are basic ideas that you should think about in terms of nutrition when you're running. Like, you definitely need to be eating before you run and after you run. So you need to refuel. After you're running, you have to make sure that you're getting enough hydration. So you can always look at the color. This, people don't love this, but look at the color of your pee and make sure it's not like really dark or really too light. And then there's something called performance plates that a lot of sports dietitians talk about that you can look at, and you can do an easy, a moderate, or a hard performance plate based on how much exercise you're doing. And it's really an image that shows you like how much of your plate should be protein, how much should be vegetable, and how much should be carbohydrate. And the carbohydrate intake should increase with the longer that you're running. So I know that protein is all the rage right now, but carbohydrates actually have a protective effect against bone stress injuries, and that is the primary source we use for energy when we're running.
Yeah, endurance athletes for sure. Carbs are probably the most important there. Um, I was about to ask you something. I forgot. That went
It's
blank.
okay. That's okay,
I had the
brother.
question right there. What we were just talking about.
Performance plates, protein, carbohydrates, eating before and after.
Oh, that's what I was gonna ask you.
Okay.
Okay, you said eat before and after. So what do you say to the people that say I like to train fat, like to run fasted, and that, like say you train early in the morning, you like to train fasted. What would you say to those people?
Yeah, so it's actually different for men and women. So, fasted exercise is better for men. It's not as good for women. So, I would start there. That would be the first thing I would say. So, for women, I would say no, just don't do it.
Mhm,
For men, if it's it depends on And again, I'm not a sports dietitian, so I'm telling you my knowledge base, and I would definitely ask for you specifically to go see a sports dietitian. But if you are an athlete, a male athlete, and you want to do it fasted, it depends on how long you're going. If you're
mhm,
going for a short run, it's probably no big deal. But once you start getting up past that 60 minutes, I don't think it's a very good idea to run fasted. Running and strength training are different in terms of like what our body needs, and it depends on like how your body is made up. There's so many different factors. That's why I often say like, please, please, please ask a sports dietitian.
yeah, so I do kind of exactly what you said. So I do during the week when I run, I do run fasted because I run super early in the morning, and I just like to get up and go. But on the weekends, it's normally when I do my longer run, so I will eat before I do those because I know it's more important. And I also will take some gels and stuff with me to eat
Yeah.
while I'm running. So I do eat on those longer runs. But normally, if it's like you said under an hour, I typically don't eat, and I don't experience any like I don't think it changes my training at all because I have eaten before and then not eaten just to kind of see the difference, and I don't notice much of a difference. But I'm also not an elite level athlete either, so for me it works. Now for somebody else it may not. So obviously try what works for you. But yeah, I typically prefer to train fasted just because I work out super early in the morning before I go to work. So it just works for me. But I know it's not necessarily ideal for some people. Like when I was doing my bodybuilding show, I hired a coach and he had me eating every day, like before work. I had to, like that wasn't an option. I was eating before training and it was fine. Like it didn't bother me. It worked out for me. It was fine. But then as soon as I got done with the show, I went back to training fasted just because it's easier for me.
So it's probably better to do what your coach said, honestly. Like, and
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be a lot. It could be a couple graham crackers. I've heard a couple dietitians say, like, just grab a couple graham crackers before you go if you're going to be running, because there's something. So I've mentioned low energy availability a couple times, and this is for men and women. It's just not giving your body enough fuel overall, and then it takes away from your body systems. If you have low energy availability, you can end up with relative energy deficiency in sport, which is called REDS, and that's a
Mhm.
really big issue and it impacts all of your body systems. So, some of the research that has come out has said that if you're not fueling before and around your workouts, then you can, even if you're eating enough calories in the day, like the entire day, you're still at higher risk for injury because you're getting these dips, what we're called within day low energy availability dips, and your body isn't recovering as well. So, that's just something to keep in mind in terms of what we know in terms of the research.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot more about the Reds lately. I've never heard that until this year, until recently. So I guess I don't know if that's kind of new. This all this research is coming out or what.
I
I've
think
just
we're
been
just
hearing
getting
about it.
louder. I think we're just
Yeah.
getting louder. It is fairly like it used to be called the female athlete triad. And then over the last 2023 is when the paper came out that was really like putting out the IOC recommendations about REDS. So from 2023 to 2025 is when we've really learned a lot more and we're talking a lot more. But it's surprising how many people don't really know about it. I just spoke at a conference to a bunch of physicians about it last week.
Mhm. So to put it in as basic terminology as possible, how would you explain what Reds is?
Yeah, it's a constellation of symptoms that occur when you don't have enough energy in your body, and it can be adaptable or it can be problematic. So it can be like within day, like I said. So it might be that you're not giving yourself enough calories to support your basal metabolic rate plus the activity that you do, and it can be within day or it can be over a long period of time. And the more days in a row that you string together where you're not getting enough fuel, the more problematic it becomes. And again, it happens in men and women equally. We just hear about it more with women. And it can really impact your performance too. Like that's how I'll see it show up a lot. If people will come to the clinic, especially this is how it shows up in men, is that they feel like their performance is impacted. And so that's where I'll feel it or hear it there. Or if somebody shows up with a lot of injuries, like they keep getting injured and nobody knows why, or they keep having a bone stress injury and nobody knows why, and then they have these GI symptoms and they're really fatigued and all these things, then we know that they're probably going down that path.
So if you do have a client that's experiencing these symptoms, what do you do then to kind of fix the problem?
Yeah, I immediately refer to a sports dietitian and an MD because they'll do blood work. There are different markers in your blood work that suggest that you might be in low energy availability heading towards REDS. So, and usually, and then there's some forms that you can fill out that answer a lot of different questions about like kind of your daily habits and those types of things that give us some cues about it as well. So the physician will do that, and then they'll work with a dietitian to try to get them into what we call energy balance. And then from my role as a physical therapist, like my role is identification of REDS a lot of times because I'll get people into my clinic before they've seen a physician or a dietitian or anybody. So I'll identify and then I'll refer out for them to treat it. And then I will help with the exercise modification and work closely with them while they're trying to restore energy balance.
So you mentioned low energy, you mentioned decrease in performance. Are there any other symptoms of REDS?
Oh, yeah. So all the symptoms I said about overtraining are also symptoms of REDS. For women, a really big thing that happens is loss of your cycle or loss of your period. But if you get to that point, you've probably been in REDS for a really long time. And you're probably deep into REDS. So all of those things, that's why it's a tricky diagnosis because some people say, well, oh, if you're like a new parent, maybe I'm not sleeping because I'm a new parent, or you might just be really tired because you've changed everything at work. So it can be a diagnosis of exclusion in some cases, but usually there's this chart that shows all the different signs and symptoms around it. And if you have your patient like point to all their signs and symptoms, after a while, it becomes very obvious if they have this or not.
And remind me again, what does RED stand for?
Relative energy deficiency in sport.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. I knew the acronym, but I
Oh,
don't remember what the words are.
that's all right. It's so many acronyms. I actually, even at this conference I went to with a bunch of physicians, I'm always like, wait, what was that one? What was that one? If you don't use them all the time, there's no way to keep up.
So, what are some of the main injuries you're seeing in running right now?
Yeah. The number one running injury is at the knee. So it could be patellofemoral pain or IT band. So that's either in the front of the knee or on the outside, maybe sometimes traveling up to the hip. So those like 50% of all running injuries there and around. And those are usually due to lack of mobility in the foot and ankle or the pelvis, and then usually some kind of weakness in the pelvic girdle. So that's like glutes, rotators, abdominal wall, adductors, those types of things. And usually you can test somebody's single leg squat, and if you see their knee diving in and their foot collapsing, then that's probably a huge part of why they're getting knee pain. There's plenty of other injuries, like hamstring injury is a big one, especially any kind of like tendinopathy. So, hamstring or a posterior tibialis or outside of the leg, like peroneal tendon. So there's a lot of tendon issues because running injuries are overuse as well.
So, what do you recommend for recovery that people can do themselves before having to come to physical therapy?
Yeah. So there are a couple things. It's modify your training program. So you don't necessarily, depending on the type of injury, you don't necessarily want to stop, right? Because running actually helps us stay strong. It's good for our mental health. It's good for our cardiovascular system. You don't necessarily want to stop, but You might try rolling out, getting those trigger points out, either with a foam roller or a lacrosse ball or a massage gun. You want to make sure that you're fueling yourself enough if you're already injured, so that you have the amount of healing, enough food to heal properly. You want to make sure you're getting enough sleep. Cold plunge is great for a lot of reasons, but cold plunge can also help if you have an inflammatory process. So those are all really good things that you can do. However, I would say, like the RunSource app has a lot of things you can do. I would say go to that if you have a running injury, because it'll give you information about training modification. It'll give you information about maybe what the reason why it happened, and then it'll give you a plan. I do hope that people would go to see somebody if they've had something that's lasting more than 7 days. That's kind of our indicator. If something's been around for longer than 7 days, you probably should see somebody, or you should probably get some help.
So I should have went and saw somebody when I hurt my leg.
Well, I was thinking that because you probably didn't need to stop. I was going to let it go, but since you mentioned it, you probably didn't need to stop running all that amount of time. And it was probably something, and oftentimes in like a hamstring injury, for instance, a lot of times you need to do eccentric strength to help that. And that's what'll help make you feel better. So our initial thought is, we need to rest it. And yes, a lot of times rest is a huge part of the whole piece of getting better. But certain injuries, like a tendon injury, like a hamstring injury, you probably need to stress the tendon in a certain way so that it can get better and stay stronger. So like with eccentric strength training or blood flow restriction training. And there's many different ways that you would do that.
Well, that's good to know, because I gave it a week. Like I stopped for like a week and it started feeling better, and then I ran and it kind of like hurt again and started feeling worse. I was like, okay, well, I got a race in a few months. Like I can't afford for this knee to stay injured. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna stop, and it worked. Like it went away completely, and I didn't have another problem with it. But that's good to know. I should have probably been working it out rather than just leaving it completely alone. But
well, it's good that it got better. So
yeah.
that's you just, and it's sometimes good to go see someone, even if you only see them once. They can give you a plan, and so that you're not wondering like, what is going on here, and is there something I could be doing? I think that as athletes, having a plan makes such a difference for our mental health as well as our physical health.
Yeah, well, I know that now for the future. I'll definitely keep
That's
that in
good.
mind.
Good.
So speaking of kind of recovery, what is a good warm up routine that you would do before you go on a run?
Yeah, so dynamic warm up is a really good thing to be doing before you run. So that could be anything from it could be lunges, it could be squats, it could be, one of my favorites is called a standing climb with a band. It could be bounding, it could be some plyometrics. You just want to get your heart rate up. You want to use some of the muscles that you would be using during running, and doing something single leg would be helpful as well, because that starts to just kick everything on. And it doesn't have to take long. It can take a minute, it can take 2 minutes, but it doesn't have to be long. Just doing something to warm your body and your muscles up before you go out.
So no specific things. You just as long as you're doing something, it should be beneficial.
Yeah, and I mean, it depends. If somebody had an injury or they're worried about something, I give them specific dynamic warm-ups. But if you don't have anything and you're just a new runner and you want to know what to do, I would say just move, like walk on your toes, walk on your heels, do some squats, do some lunges, work on those types of things.
And then I want to ask you the same question for after the run. What would you do immediately after? I know you talked a little bit about foam rolling, and things like that. Is there any like cool down routine that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think that after the run, you can do static stretching if you want. So if you feel tight anywhere, static stretching usually should be after the run. Foam rolling is really good. Some kind of recovery. You want to do recovery. Obviously, I've said this several times, but eat something. If it's a really big run, so 10 miles or more, I would say try a cold plunge. That's usually really helpful. Or if you have Normatec boots, do something like that. But depending on how far you're running, you may want to take a nap, just something that's recovery worthy.
Yeah, that's when I was doing the Ironman. That's when I started taking the cold plunges.
Yeah.
So that's where that came from. So I couldn't wait. I was like, you go do like a 3-hour bike ride, and then you run 45 minutes right off the bike. I was like, I can't wait to go get in a cold ice bath.
I used to hate it but love it at the same time, right? So I would put a hat in my, because I didn't like buy a cold plunge tub. I just used my tub and put ice in it.
Mhm.
And I like would get my hat and my sweatshirt and I would put it in the dryer and then I would put it on and run to the tub. So nerdy.
It definitely takes some getting used to.
Yeah, it does.
So what? I just went blank again.
That's okay.
What was I going to ask you? Oh, running form. All right. So you always hear the question: should you run? Should you land on your forefoot? Should you land on your heel? Should you land on your toes? What is your answer?
It doesn't matter because during our running, we actually run on all parts of our foot. So if you, the studies have shown that if somebody is running a marathon, part of the marathon, they may be a forefoot striker. Sometimes they're a heel foot striker. Sometimes they're midfoot. So it changes. Also, it's not really as important on how you land or what your landing posture is as what's happening up above. So I usually focus, if I see somebody has a big heel strike, what I want to know is, okay, is that heel strike underneath their body or is it really far in front of them? If it's really far in front of them, then what's happening is they have to overcome what's called the braking force to go forward. And so that's putting more, that's harder on your body.
Mhm.
And so it's not the heel strike that's the problem, it's the location of where your foot is landing. So then for that person, I might work on cadence, I might work on posture, keeping your rib cage stacked over your pelvis and leaning a little bit forward from your ankles. I might work on plyometrics to get your turnover a little bit better, things like that. So despite all of the articles and things out there about foot strike, it's not really that important. It's just the result or what we see that everybody kind of picks up on.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I've seen different answers. Like people said different things, but recently I've seen pretty much what you're saying. It don't really matter that much. Just people are kind of more they lean more towards one or the other. But I've pretty much seen that you should strike under your body. Is that correct in saying that? You don't
Yeah.
want to strike out in front of your body because, like you said, you're hitting that breaking point and then you're having to overcome that. So that's
Yeah.
something that I kind of want to work with like a running coach just to dial in my form. I don't think my form's bad, but I think it could be better if that makes sense. Like I'm not getting injured from running,
Mm-hmm.
but I do kind of want to work on adding some speed and things like that. So I may work with a coach here soon. I don't know. We'll play around with it because I want to run a marathon and see how fast I can run it. But I think I need to tweak my technique just a little bit to really, add some speed to my marathon time.
Well, in running, I mean, only like 75% of people don't work with a running coach. So only about 25% of people do. And I do recommend it if you're trying to hit some new goal for sure,
Hmm.
because they can tell you little things that you don't necessarily realize about yourself. And even if it's just tweaking your running plan or your running form or whatever it is, we do gait analysis and gait retraining at our clinic. So we do a lot of like form analysis and we help people improve their form all the time. You don't necessarily need to improve your form to get faster, but it does. I mean, they do go hand in hand a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, I would say add a lot more plyometrics and think about like, because if you think about it, it's like a spring. So when you run, you have to accept the force and then you have to release the force.
Hmm.
And if your body isn't built to accept that force and release it like a spring, then breakdown happens up the chain and then you lose a lot of speed and you lose your body kind of your form isn't that great. So plyometrics, if you haven't been doing that, that could be useful for your running form.
Yeah, I definitely need to add in some more, like I said, specific running workouts. Because right now I typically do like bodybuilding style training. I definitely could add in some more running specific training. And whenever I do sign up for a marathon, I will add in some stuff like that. I just did an Olympic triathlon like a month and a half ago.
Fun.
So I'm kind of just in this like weird limbo space where I'm not really training for anything. So I'm just kind of maintaining what I got now, trying to
Yeah.
give my body a break and recover. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. But I can't decide what I'm going to do next, like what the next goal is.
Well, it's good to have a break and to recover as much as
Hmm.
your physical self and your mental self, because triathlon's hard and it's a lot. It takes a lot of time. I mean, I don't think people realize how many hours of training you put in
Hmm.
because you have to train the bike, you have to train the run, and you have to train the swim. And then if you're doing strength training on the side, which I think most people should be if they can handle it. That's a lot of hours.
Yeah, that's people ask me like what was harder that I did, and I'll say like when it comes to training, the Ironman was by far harder because it's just more time.
Yeah.
Like, but the ultra marathon, like the training for it, in my opinion, was pretty easy. Like, because all I had to do was run. Yeah, I ran a lot, but I was only running 6 days a week. When I was doing triathlon, I'm training 7 days a week, and most of those days are 2 a days.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot more hours, a lot more time training. But
That's
then
right.
when it came to the actual like race day, the ultra marathon was definitely way harder than the Ironman. So it's harder in different areas. So like training for Ironman is harder, but race day for the ultra was much harder for sure.
Yeah.
So what is one misconception about running that you see out there nowadays that you either you don't agree with or you need to debunk it?
That's a good question. So I think that you can just run, that you can go out the door and just run and not have to think about anything is a big misconception. I think that's the draw to running.
Mhm.
But I think there's so much more to think about than we realize, whether it's our shoes or our nutrition or our sleep or our strength. Um, but also on the flip side, you don't necessarily need to think of all of those things. You just need to make sure most of them are dialed in. So I think that that's probably a big misconception that we see. And then the foot strike is definitely a huge thing that people come
Mhm.
in and talk about. And they often try to change their foot strike themselves and then end up injured, or they try to increase their cadence to 180 steps per minute, which is not really, you don't really need to do that. And then they end up injured. So I guess I answered three things. Sorry.
Is there like a cadence that's like the golden standard cadence when it comes to running?
Yeah, so there's this one paper a while back that said that 180 steps per minute was what the gold standard was, but it was based on elite runners, and the
Mm.
circumstance doesn't really fit like everybody else. So what we're seeing is that somewhere between 165 to 185 is where people should live, and it's very different from person to person.
Yeah, so running's so in cycling they have one too. I think it's 120 is the cadence there. But for cycling and running it's a little different because cycling you can adjust the resistance. But running not you can't necessarily so why I wonder why like that 165 to 185 is like a standard because some people are going to be a lot slower, some people are going to be a lot faster. So I'm just curious as to how they come up with that number. Like what is that for long distance runs? Is that for, marathons or is that for speed work? What
Yeah,
is that cadence for?
that's for anybody, really anybody in general. So the elites tend to be higher on that scale. So their leg turnover seems is typically a little bit higher, and they're more efficient with their running form. So it's a little bit higher. But what I'm saying between that 165 and kind of 185 is that you can live in anywhere in there, and it might still work for you. So that could be an endurance person that's doing a marathon. It could be somebody who's doing a 10K. And that it varies based on how efficient you are as a runner and how strong you are and how well your spring is working and all of those things.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never really looked into my cadence too much when it comes to running. I've always just done time or mileage. I hadn't really looked too much into all like the different metrics and stuff. So
It's
I'm
probably
curious.
better.
I'm
No,
curious as to what mine is.
no, I bet it's probably better that you haven't. I think that what happens is that runners oftentimes get so stuck on one metric or two
Mhm.
metrics, and then they go down this rabbit hole, and then it causes so much stress, and then it probably may not have been really that important for them in the first place. And so, just going out to run sometimes is the healthiest way to do it. So, if you haven't looked, don't bother. The reason the reason I talk about cadence is because in rehab and in gait retraining, we use it for certain injuries to help offload certain areas of the body so that people can continue to run in a safe way. And we just measure that to help us manage gait.
Yeah, I thought I was gonna be like I was gonna nerd out on all the different metrics and stuff. So I know I got the nice Apple Watch, and I do record all my workouts. Um, but I found that I never go back and look at the stats. I look at my time obviously and my mileage because that's what I'm tracking for my run. But like I never go back and look at all the little nitty gritty stuff that you can see. Like, and I don't use Strava. Like I try to do the Strava thing. I don't ever do. I just track it on my Apple Watch and that's it. But I know some people like to look into all that, so I hadn't got in too much into it. I'm sure if I train for a marathon when it's cadence stuff is actually important, then I probably will look into it more then. But for now, it don't really. I don't really care for it too much.
Well, and it is interesting because I find that like marathon runners and road runners care more than people who do a lot of trails. So there are different
Mhm.
personalities for each type of runner.
Yeah. So did I read correctly? You have a TED Talk coming up, or you already did
Oh,
it?
I haven't done it yet, actually. So I have a TED Talk called "How to Have an Identity Crisis," and it talks about it basically tells my story of almost dying when I was running. So I was training for an Ironman, a half Ironman, and I almost died. I went into ventricular tachycardia, and then throughout that process, we found out that I had a rare genetic heart disease. And exercise makes it worse. So it's pretty devastating. And I still exercise now, but it's very modified. And throughout that process, I went through that whole identity crisis, like who am I without running, which I mentioned earlier. And it was really hard. And I was pretty depressed and there was a lot of anxiety during that time. So I had to figure out what the heck I was, who I was, and what I was going to do. And so that TED Talk talks about that. I was supposed to do it in September, but the school that I was, it's a TEDx talk, and the college lost funding, so it got canceled. And now I'm in second round pitch for 4 different other locations. So I will do it. I just don't have another date yet.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're still here. That's awesome. I'm sorry you had to go through that. I know I would struggle with that if you took away, working out and running for me. That would be tough. I don't know how to get through that, but luckily you're still able to work out a little bit.
Yeah.
And you found, I guess your way around it is you found helping other people. It's kind of your what you do now.
Yeah.
So it's always good that you have a way to still give back. Still to you're still involved in running and health and stuff, even though you may not be able to really push yourself like you used to.
Yeah, it's just a different thing. I still
Hmm.
lift 3 days a week. I still walk and do yoga, and I do run once or twice a week, but it's like I didn't used to consider this running because I used to be super intense.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, I go run for like 2 miles with a friend and we walk a little bit. But I mean, I really I value it so much more now than I did when I was running
Hmm.
25, 26, 30 miles, because before I didn't think I could lose it, and now I realize that I can.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't value things until they're gone, until it's too late.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I want to respect your time. So I want to say thank you again for joining the podcast. And if you would, just let everybody know where they can find you at.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Murphy. You can find me at my website. It's katemihevicedwards.com, and Mihevic is Mihevc. And that's also my Instagram, so you can follow me there. And my website has everything, has the podcast that I have. It's called Interdisciplinary Case Miles. That is a podcast where if you have a running injury, you can send in your case and we'll go through it and try to help you.
Mm.
And that's with a sports dietitian and an MD and myself. So that's really fun. And then it also has the RunSource app and my clinics and my consulting all in one place. So it's all on that website.
Awesome. And you said you're based out of Atlanta?
Yeah, I'm based out of Atlanta.
I'm
Yeah.
in Mobile, so I'm not too far from you.
No, you're not.
Not too
So
far.
come on over sometime. Let me
Yeah.
know.
We do go to Georgia a lot, so
Oh,
we go
that's
to I
cool.
have some family that's from Atlanta, so from Kennesaw.
Oh, yeah.
So we used to go there a lot, but they've moved down here recently, so
Oh,
we don't
well, you're
travel as
lucky.
much.
They're closer. They're either
Yeah.
you're lucky or you're not. I'm not sure.
No, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Okay, good. That's good.
But yeah, that's gonna do it for today's podcast episode. Thank y'all for tuning in, and we will see y'all again for another episode next week. Y'all have a great day.